Welcome to Going for the Green, our NBC Sports EDGE betting show as we get ready for the Tour Championship with Drew Dinsick and Will Gray. I'm Sara Perlman. And guys, the Tour Championship gets underway Thursday from East Lake Golf Club in Atlanta, Georgia. But this is not your usual golf tournament. Only the top 30 players from the FedEx Cup rankings play in this event, which is a no-cut event, and it is the final stop in the three-tournament FedEx Cup playoffs. And the Tour Championship begins with starting strokes assigned by the FedEx Cup standings. The FedEx Cup leaders essentially begin the event with a head start on the competition. More on that in just a few minutes. But gentlemen, we begin the show by taking a look at the odds presented by PointsBet and the leaderboard. So let's take a look and see what we have. We look at the outright winner market. Patrick Cantlay at plus 350, having to do with the starting strokes. Jon Rahm, DeChambeau, Finau, Justin Thomas. And as we take a look at the odds and where it stands right now because of the starting strokes, Will, this is interesting. And for people that don't necessarily know the starting strokes and how it works, I'd like for you to take the time to kind of not only explain it, but also tell us how that's going to change your handicap for the FedEx Cup finale here.
Yeah, Sara, this is a fun one. Break out your abacus to try and figure out where everyone's going to go. It's going to get easier as the week progresses, but early week, it's kind of tough to figure out where everyone's starting and how the betting markets correlate. We're almost into football season. NFL's around the corner. So we're talking point spreads now with golf, where you've got Patrick Cantlay and Jon Rahm are on even footing at plus 350. You're basically betting on Rahm -4 because Jon Rahm is starting the week at 6 under. Patrick Cantlay is at -10. He's the leader over everyone after his win last week at the BMW Championship. So the odds makers are telling us that they think that Rahm is about one shot better every round than Patrick Cantlay on East Lake. He's clearly the number one player in the world. When you look at PointsBet, also has a 72-hole gross market of just who's going to have the lowest score for 72 holes, which we can get into a little more in a bit. But Jon Rahm is a clear favorite in that market. He's plus 650. No one else is better than 12-1. But here, as you see, you've got Patrick Cantlay has a 2-shot lead over Tony Finau. Everyone else kind of cascades from there. Rahm is sitting there in the 4 slot at 6 under, but clearly he gets a lot of deserved attention given how well he has played over the last 3 or 4 months.
Right. I take a look at Tony Finau, who, of course, secured his second career victory 2 weeks ago at the Northern Trust. He begins at 8 under. We're just going over basically where the starting strokes are. And you mentioned the 72 hole and the regular without the starting strokes handicap. We'll get into that in just a bit. We'll have picks on both with the handicap and probably some without. But what's interesting to consider here, Drew, is that Rory, who was 5 strokes off the lead in 2019, won the tournament. He's now 8 back this year. So it leads me to believe there is some value in other guys that could win the FedEx Cup and the entire Tour Championship here, even without being 10 under like Patrick Cantlay. So is there anyone that you could see another come behind winner as we saw back in 2019 with Rory?
Yeah, I like Rory. I think it's going to be tough. This is a tough ask for any of these guys to really make up this much ground. But what you do have going for you, at least in my opinion, is Cantlay was absolutely white hot on the greens last time out. He could, if he regresses to his kind of more standard quality of play, this specific course doesn't fit his strengths as well as last week. So, you need a couple of things to happen. It can't just be some guy goes nuclear. You need the top of the market, top of the field to come back a little bit. But I do think that is possible. These guys there are relatively thin margins between all these players. And any one of them could get hot. So I do think that I would not say it is a foregone conclusion that these guys at the top of the board are going to run away with this thing. All three, Cantlay, Finau, and DeChambeau, I think all realistically are going to come back to the field over the course of this weekend. And does that open the door for Rahm? Yes. Does that open the door for someone who could get hot from sort of that second tier? Of course. This is going to be a very dramatic finish to the season, and this has been one of the more entertaining golf seasons that I can remember, and I'm very much looking forward to this tournament.
Yeah, it's funny that you like Rory. I've seen a lot of talk about him coming up, especially at East Lake. He is starting at 2 under, so maybe worth a small unit kind of flyer. We'll get into that in just a bit. But, Will, as we look at East Lake and the golf course, and I know you're really keen on looking at not only who has done well in the past, but also how they're playing and how that translates to the course play in particular. So I know if you look at who's kind of fitting this course, they probably have a great performance on Bermuda greens. Who kind of fits the script, and what are you looking at who could do well here over the weekend?
Yeah, Sarah, I think it's nice now as we're in the third leg of the playoffs to finally have some course history to sink our teeth into. After going to Liberty National and Caves Valley, those were two courses that these guys either haven't seen before or don't see regularly. Now you have East Lake, which is the Tour Championship venue every year. So you do have some data going on, guys. Patrick Reed's making his 8th start, DJ 13th, Rory's 7th, I believe. So you know how some of these guys play this course, who plays it well, and then who doesn't. I agree with Drew. Patrick Cantlay is not a guy that really fits well with this course. We saw him 2 years ago when Rory won. He was in that 2 seed. He was at 8 under and really faded from there. Rory, on the other hand, has only one finish outside the top 10 in 7 previous starts. And the one guy in terms of course form that really stands out is Xander Schauffele. He won here back in 2017 when it was still a split trophy situation. He had the low gross last year. He finished with the lowest 72-hole score in 2020, even though Dustin Johnson, who started at 10 under, ended up winning the FedEx Cup. You see here, he is clearly leading in terms of strokes gained total when we're just looking at East Lake. But this course, there's a premium on keeping the ball in the fairway. You usually don't think about that with PGA Tour venues like this, but the rough is very difficult to get out of and land on these greens, which are super slick. And so I think the other area we want to look at is not only putting on Bermuda greens, but putting on really fast Bermuda greens. These are going to be stimping around 12 or 13. These are some of the fastest greens these guys are going to face all year long. You see a guy who's making his first trip to East Lake, actually, in Sam Burns. He's one of 2 rookies this week at the Tour Championship. I'm very high on him for a lot of reasons, but here's one where he sticks out as a very good putter on fast greens. Cam Smith, Bryson DeChambeau also in that list. So those are some of the factors that you want to try and look at, but I personally really enjoy the fact that we can dive into some very reliable historical numbers on this course where guys either figure it out or they tend to struggle.
Yeah, we're going to look into course history in particular as we get into liability, how the odds makers ultimately set their odds for this Tour Championship in particular. And of course, I know, Will, it's going to impact on who you choose ultimately as the outright winner in some of the prop markets. We'll get to that in a bit. We're also going to hear from the head trader at PointsBet next. Sharpen your handicap for East Lake by utilizing the new collection of golf betting tools available exclusively to NBC Sports Edge premium subscribers. DFS users can view players' projections and access lineup optimizers, while the Edge Driver tool allows users to create customized searches and analyze the betting favorites across hundreds of variables. Use the code GREEN10 to get 10% off any monthly or annual subscription. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to NBC Sports Edge, your one-stop for everything fantasy, DFS, and more. Get up-to-date news and insights from our award-winning analysts. Looking to raise your game even more? NBC Sports Edge Plus helps you level up with an array of premium tools and resources keeping you ahead of the pack. Learn more at NBCSportsEdge.com.
Thanks for joining us here on Going for the Green, our Tour Championship Edge betting show with Will Gray, Drew Dinsick. I'm Sara Perlman, and now we welcome in Jay Croucher, head trader at PointsBet Sportsbook. And Jay, we talked a little bit about course history and how we're trying to handicap ultimately this wild FedEx Cup finale. But as it stands with you guys, what's the liability like? Who are the biggest liabilities? Have you seen a lot of movement and money come in as of late?
So the story with us is Jon Rahm, where he's 25% of our bet count. He's the story at the top of the odds board. I think that the most interesting thing about this odds board is what Will spoke about in terms of Rahm basically being -4 in terms of his line. And that just means we think that he is 4 strokes better over 72 than Patrick Cantlay. And I think that Rahm has gone a little bit under the radar just because he hasn't racked up that many wins. But right now, we think that the gap between Rahm and everyone else in golf is the biggest gap in the sport since peak Tiger Woods, basically. And that's why you're seeing Rahm, still being the equal favorite for the Tour Championship, despite only being 4th in terms of the strokes head start, and also being +650 to win with the low score over 72.
Oh, that's fascinating. And, there is an angle here to go against Rahm, I think. And it has to do with what Will mentioned in the last segment, which is the speed of the greens. Rahm is a very aggressive putter. And for sure, if he is trying to make up ground early on here, if he's being aggressive on the greens, and if the green speed gets the better of him, I could see that unwinding his game to a degree, at least opening the door for someone else. But otherwise, your point is extremely correct. If you look at, just in general strokes gained, Rahm compared to the rest of the field right now, the gap is enormous. Are there any players that particularly stand out to you in terms of this greens and these green speeds specifically, like I don't know, a Rory or a JT or anyone that can really get it done with the flat stick that you're sweating it out here?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the guys that Will mentioned, I think with us, the main adjustment for course here, though, is around hitting fairways. And this is a course that has really heavily leaned towards driving accuracy being the most important skill, which would normally point to a guy like Colin Morikawa. But with Morikawa's back injury and how he's looked the past 2 tournaments, he's fallen right off in terms of the odds and not much activity on him. And then on the other side of things, in terms of guys that may not benefit from needing to hit fairways, that would be players like Jordan Spieth and Bryson DeChambeau, who are a bit longer than you might normally expect in an outright.
Jay, you mentioned Colin Morikawa. I know that you guys crafted a market to win the FedEx Cup during Wyndham Week, heading into these playoffs before a lot of these turbulent changes took place. And as a result, those lines have really changed. I know you said Morikawa, he was the betting favorite to win the FedEx Cup, understandably, as the number 1 seed, has really struggled the last 2 weeks. You have a guy like Tony Finau, who when that market opened, he was 80-1 to win the FedEx Cup. Now he's down to 7-1 after that win at the Northern Trust and a good showing last week at the BMW. Any big moves out of those markets, or maybe some notable tickets of guys that got ahead of the curve, maybe put up a FedEx Cup winner ticket during Wyndham Week and now have quite the sweat on their hands?
Yeah, so I think the story with this is just how much the Northern Trust and the BMW Championship count towards shifting the odds. There are so many points up for grabs in those 2 tournaments, and that's why Tony Finau, like you said, moving in from 80-1, he's a big mover. Also Cantlay, even though Cantlay was plus 600, he was already high up in the rankings, he now goes into plus 350. And then the big sliders are Spieth and Morikawa, who opened as favourites and haven't played well the past 2 weeks. But the constant, as he always is Jon Rahm, who's firmed slightly with his strong performances. But we did take some action on Tony Finau at 80-1, so there will be some people sweating that out.
Certainly interesting to hear about how your odds have adjusted before the playoffs, of course, now what they are. And as we showed at the top of this show, a little bit of action, it sounds like, on Tony Finau. Any big bets that you guys are now going to be sweating out from Thursday to Sunday?
So a big one that we've just taken is Scotty Scheffler at 80-1, $750 on him to win 60 grand. Scheffler starts 9 strokes behind Cantlay, so he'll have a lot of work to do. But this course might throw up a bit more variance, certainly more than last week. It should play a bit harder than DeChambeau and Cantlay going 27 under. So there might be some chance for someone to come from the clouds.
Drew doesn't seem very confident in that play.
I mean, if Scotty Scheffler's dad wants to put that bet down on him, that's fine.
Hey, Jay, real quick, before we let you go, it's interesting that you guys, of course, have the 72-hole regular outright winner, and then we look at the lowest score to par. What's the action like? Where are you taking more action right now? And in general, how does it differentiate, if it does at all?
Yeah, so again, I think a story here is Jon Rahm being so short. You don't see many players plus 650 to win a golf tournament, but that's where Rahm is, and that's because of just his insane consistency. If you give him the memorial and say that he was going to finish top 10 there before he was forced to withdraw, which I think is fair, then 15 of the past 19 tournaments, he's finished in the top 10, which is crazy. That level of consistency is just unheard of. So Rahm is the clear favourite there. And then talking a lot about, the course fit and course history that Will was speaking on, Rory McIlroy and Xander Schauffele, who have a bit of history here. The fact that they are tied for the second favourite in the 72-hole low score, I think is pretty instructive as well, whereas guys like DeChambeau are a bit further down. And then Spieth and Morikawa, just their form has tailed off so much. Morikawa, perhaps hindered by the back injury, they've fallen out of the top 7 in the odds, whereas a couple of weeks ago they were in the top 3.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that this is the tail of the tape, and I keep hearing Jon Rahm's name come out of Jay's mouth, and I understand he's just such a massive difference maker right now. I think if you look at the strokes gained data, we're getting to a point where in the post-Tiger era, the difference between Rahm at number 1 and whoever is at number 2 is about as big of a gap as we have seen in several years. It just really speaks to how well he is playing. overall. He almost went wire to wire at the Northern Trust, even though he didn't factor last week. I absolutely expect him to be in the mix this week. I think it's just a question of how you want to bet him with the two dueling markets available, which number, which angle gives you the best price.
Yeah, no surprise there. Jay, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks, everyone.
We're going to get into prop bets and best bets coming up on Going for the Green. If you're looking for even more betting coverage on the green and beyond, make sure to check out our podcast. Bet the Edge, powered by PointsBet, is live Monday through Friday to arm you with all of the actionable information you need to wager with confidence. Our crew provides you with unique statistical data, trends, and projections using our Edge betting tools, which our PointsBet partner helps power with real-time live updating odds. So whether you're eyeing the futures market, looking at player props, targeting some over-unders, or on the fence with an against the spread bet, give our podcast a listen to give you that extra edge. We'll be back again right after this. We're hearing a lot about Jon Rahm on our Tour Championship Edge betting show here, Going for the Green. Thanks for being with us. And it leads me to believe either you are going to fade him or follow him and put some action on Jon Rahm in the prop market or outright winner market. So, guys, this is where we really get to dive into the props and what you're looking and where you're looking to target as we get ready for the Tour Championship. And Drew, I'll begin with you here in the finisher market. I know something that you love to place a lot of wagers here as well. How are you going to attack the finisher market?
Well, that whole segment with Jay kind of shook me a little because you like to think you have some angle or some edge over the bookmakers, but everything he said was all the content that I had to provide. So I'm like, well, if they know, then this already built into all these prices, and I'm walking into some traps. But we'll go ahead anyway. I think the most fun way to attack this tournament really is to go for the guys that have a rich course history and a good course fit. We've named all of those names. Schauffele is a guy like that. McIlroy is a guy like that. Justin Thomas is a guy like that. Sergio Garcia is a guy like that. And I think you can attack them in the matchups. That's a super fun way to do it. Again, you can also attack guys who are out of form. We mentioned Spieth. Spieth is obviously spraying it right now off the tee. Accuracy, driving accuracy is going to matter. So he's a guy that I would attack in the head-to-head market. Similarly, Oosthuizen and Morikawa are dealing with injuries that I think give them a decent handicap in this tournament. So head-to-head market is where I'm going for most of my action. And as I mentioned, I think highly of Rory McIlroy's chances to close the gap here to compete for this title. And I'm going to take a head-to-head on him as well against Dustin Johnson. This is my first favorite look here. You can get Rory McIlroy right now in the tournament head-to-head at plus 105. McIlroy, of course, switched his irons back to the irons he was more comfortable with. And I honestly thought that was really impacting his game over the course of the summer. He was, in general, overrated in a lot of the tournaments we saw this summer. But now that he's back to his more comfortable irons, his play has gotten better each of the last 2 weeks. I think he takes another step forward this week and really does quite solid work against Dustin Johnson, who it looks to be just playing the season out.
Drew, I'll brag for you. You're a humble handicapper, and last week your head-to-heads for the BMW Championship were spot on, so kudos to you. So I love your look here. Will, what stands out in the head-to-head or top finisher market? What do you got?
Yeah, I always like being on the same page as Drew, and I am this week. I like that Rory play. Another one that we both agree on is a fade of someone he just mentioned. That's Louis Oosthuizen. I really like Sungjae Im, minus 108 over Oosthuizen this week. Louis missed a couple of weeks, came back last week for the BMW, coming off a neck strain, really didn't do too much. Sungjae Im is starting to play really well. He finished third last week at Caves Valley. If you look at some of those metrics on courses where it's important to find the fairway, where it's important to keep the ball in play on these greens, he is going to rise up the standings, and I think that he could be in for a big week. There was a little bit of a hangover effect with him following the Olympics. There was a big deal for he and Siwoo Kim as the South Koreans. They were trying to play out of mandatory military service with a medal. It didn't happen, but I think he's starting to get back on the horse, and I think he could be in for a big week. And then, as you mentioned, in the finisher market, this is interesting. We don't usually have 30-man fields, and you've got top 10 prices. You only have to beat 20 guys out of 30. I think a guy near the bottom that has a lot of course history that we have not yet mentioned is Billy Horschel. He's a former FedEx Cup champion, won this event back in 2014, has a runner-up since then. He's starting in that backpack at even par. The last 5 guys this week all started even, but you can get him at plus 750 to work his way up to a top 10 finish. I know it's going to be an uphill climb. He's giving tangible strokes away to a lot of really good players in front of him, but I do think that he's in that mix of guys potentially playing for one of those Ryder Cup picks. Steve Stricker making his 6 selections next week after this event. He really wants to show out and make that team. So I wouldn't be surprised if he goes deep and makes a run for that.
I'm actually going to give a play out here, and Drew heard this on our podcast earlier, Bet the Edge, but since we're talking a little bit about the prop market for top 5, you could find Justin Thomas at plus 235. Will, would love to hear your comments on this after, but I like this. I think if you look at as of late, I know he's not playing his best golf, but we talk about course history, and he has done really well here. And with the staggered scoring start, he starts 4 under, and that makes a big difference. Not to mention he's making his 6th straight start at Eastlake, and he's done really well. Has a great record here. He's never finished worse than 7th in his 5 appearances at Eastlake, a pair of runner-ups. I think he wants to head into Ryder Cup playing well, making him feel confident, of course, going into there. So I think he loves the course, has a lot of success. And as you pointed out, course history does matter a little bit. So at plus 235, I will take JT to finish in the top 5. Will?
Yeah, I love that play. You're stealing some of my notes for later. But I do think that, listen, JT is somewhat undervalued right now because he has been putting like me for about a month. And that's never good because he is hitting the ball as well as you would expect from him. The putter just went ice cold at a really bad time. It started to turn around last week at the BMW, shot a 66 in the final round, tied for 4th the week before at the Northern Trust. All of a sudden, we're starting to get some results again from Justin Thomas, whose Players' Championship win in March feels like it was about 3 years ago. And so I do think you could get some favorable numbers on him, given that he only has to jump past 5 guys. He's in that T4 or T6 group starting at 4 under. Sarah, I'll give you one more that's also in that group at 4 under that I'm really high on. Not a course history guy, one of those rookies, Sam Burns. And I think that Sam Burns might have the inside track for getting this 12th and final pick from Steve Stricker for the Ryder Cup. I really like Sam Burns for first-round leader at 30-1. He has 12 leads or co-leads after rounds this year. That's more than anyone on tour. Rahm has 9. Spieth has 8. He is really head and shoulders above the list in terms of guys that have held at least a share of the lead after any round. 9 rounds of 64 or better across this season. He can go really low, T3 and birdie average. There's a lot to like as Sam Burns tries to make a late charge to potentially make his Ryder Cup debut next month.
Well, I'm so happy we're on the same side. You like when you're on Drew's side. I like that as well. And when you like Justin Thomas, makes me feel a little bit better. But Sam Burns, awesome look, first round leader. Drew, as we continue to look at the prop market for a little bit, I know there's different novelty props that we always try to go into. Is there anything else that has caught your eye that you're going to bet on as we lead into the Tour Championship?
I kind of want to take on Erik van Rooyen as top South African at plus 165, just because Louis Oosthuizen, ultimately his score last week, what I thought was a little deceptive. He did something before that 3rd round where he came out and just lit the course on fire. Otherwise, his play was very uninspiring, and he is dealing with the back injury. He has cooled off as we've tailed into the later half of the season. He looks ready to pack it in and prepare for 2022. So if Van Rooyen can continue his form, which has been impressive as late, definitely this isn't a guy that I think fits particularly well in terms of course fit. Doesn't fit particularly well in terms of course history, but just head to head effectively with with Oosthuizen at plus 165 is a nice play.
Drew, I've got one for you. I know that you crunch numbers much better than me, so we've got a prop here from PointsBet of basically a field bet. You can take Cantlay, Bryson, and Rahm, the top 3 on the board, at minus 135, everyone else at plus 115, talking about who's going to win the FedEx Cup, factoring in those starting strokes. I like the field. I think that Cantlay and DeChambeau specifically are a little weak at the top. I don't love fading Jon Rahm, but I do think if you get 27 out of 30 guys in this situation, plus 115 is not a bad price. What are your thoughts?
I make fair price for that plus 105. So yeah, I'm in on the field at plus 115. That's huge. That's a nice look. And honestly, I'm looking for ways. I don't think the price for Rahm ultimately is fair. And that's what the entire handicap of this tournament comes down to is plus 350 fair. And realistically, with the faster greens, I think there's enough of an angle there to try to pick some nits with Jon Rahm at the top of the board here. Cantlay, I definitely do not think is fairly priced at plus 350. He looks likely to give back big time here, and that should open the door, to the likes of the Tony Finau's, Justin Thomas's, and even the McIlroys of the world. So very excited to see how that plays out. But field at plus 115 is a good look.
Absolutely. We still have much more to come, including our daily fantasy picks and sleepers and our best bets and outright winners for the Tour Championship. This week, NBC Sports Predictor, powered by PointsBet, features a special golf pick'em contest for the Tour Championship with a massive $50,000 jackpot. Be sure to get your picks in before Thursday morning for your chance to win big. Be right back after this.
Don't leave money on the table. No matter your sport, the Predictor app has got you covered. Tens of thousands in cash prizes up for grabs every week. And it's free to play. Download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet now.
You are watching Going for the Green as we are getting ready for the 2021 Tour Championship. And we welcome in Patrick McDonald, good friend of the show and NBC Sports Edge's very own golf analyst and betting analyst indeed. And as we talk about betting, we always talk about daily fantasy. And I love to pick your brain as we get ready to play, whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, wherever you play your daily fantasy and put your lineups. You could argue that you need to be able to find some value. So you look at the top of the board and players that are not too expensive, but you think are going to have a good showing in this field of 30, Patrick. Who stands out?
So it's a weird week, not only from a betting perspective, but also DFS, just because the finishing points are already factored in. And so someone I'm looking at is Sung J M at 7,300. Right now, he's T11 with that group at 3 under par. And for all the reasons Will just said, in his matchup analysis, I love Sung Jae this week. His flat stick finally showed some form there in Baltimore. He gained more than 6 strokes on the green. And he typically does his best work on Bermuda, which we have at Eastlake. And over the last month or so, his last 3 outings, tee to green, he's been one of the best players on tour. So it feels like one of those spots where he might be a bit more well-rested after the Olympic hangover. Tee to green, the putting's coming around. I think all signs point to Sung Jae this week, and with the ability to climb up a few more spots as opposed to going down like those at the top of the board, I think he provides a ton of value.
Yeah, I'm definitely on Team Sung Jae this week in a variety of factors, and whether it's betting or DFS. One guy that I am very high on in terms of value. It's interesting with the pricing this week. We're so used to, you look at DraftKings, usually go at 11,000 at the top, down to about 6,000. But with these starting strokes in a small field, it is a wide range. You're going from over 13,000 with Cantlay down to 5,000 at the bottom with Van Rooyen. So 10,000 or 10,100 for Cam Smith, I think is some great value. He's starting in the 5 slot where Rory McIlroy won this tournament from 2 years ago. He's only behind 4 other guys. He's starting at 500 par. We saw what he did a couple weeks ago at the Northern Trust, nearly beat Tony Finau and got that victory. And when you look at some of the Eastlake metrics, especially putting on these fast greens, he ticks up to the top. I think that he has had a very solid run over the last month or two. We saw him play some really good golf at TPC Southwind in Memphis in a WGC format. So as you're looking to pick a favorite at the top, I think you can get a lot of value out of Cam Smith in that $10,000 range without really breaking the bank.
Okay, Cam Smith, love it. All right, I'll be the bad guy and ask about people that are probably not going to do well and that we should fade and leave out our daily fantasy roster. So Patrick, I begin with you here. Who am I benching?
I hate to pick on this guy because it seems like everyone is this day and age, but Bryson DeChambeau at 12,300. I mean, like I said, the finishing position's already priced in, and I only see him going down as the week progresses. Mentally, we have no idea where this guy is. I think a lot of people read that ESPN article with, a little spout with the fan there at the end. And on paper, Eastlake is not the course for Bryson. You got to hit fairways here. You got to, be nice and tidy around the greens. And that just doesn't fit Bryson's game. He's even came out publicly saying that this Donald Ross design kind of neutralizes his game plan. So I think as the week progresses, he's only going to get lower and lower on the leaderboard and lose points from a DFS perspective. So I'm going to be steering clear of him.
Yeah, I'm going to go right to the top. I'm taking Patrick Cantlay off the board at 13,400. We saw 2 years ago he started this tournament at 8 under and tumbled from there. I think it could be a similar story this week. He putted out of his mind last week. I mean, it was a historic putting performance at Caves Valley when you look at Eastlake specifically and some of these really fast Bermuda greens. He's not only back to the middle of the pack, he's near the bottom in terms of strokes gained putting, and it's really not a surface that's very conducive to his game. He's already locked up that Ryder Cup spot. I just don't think that there's a lot to like this week, given how much you have to pay for him. So I'm going to be using my money elsewhere, and you can leave Patrick Cantlay at the top.
Okay, Cantley, DeChambeau off my roster for FanDuel this weekend. I can guarantee you that. But I need a sleeper pick, someone that's a little cheaper that you think could do well, either given course history or their recent play. Patrick, who are we taking?
Yeah, so the sleepers down at the board, like Will said, they're really cheap this week just because you have some guys starting 10 strokes back. And one guy at that even par number is Sergio Garcia at 5,400 on DraftKings. Tee to green, he's been fantastic this summer, and his last 2 starts, the putter has finally started to come around. He posted more than 5 strokes gained there at Caves Valley, and I don't really expect him to putt that well per se, but just a fraction of that number could go a long way for his chances this week. He needs some strong starts here coming in for the Ryder Cup, even though Captain Patrick Harrington has all but guaranteed him a spot on the team. But knowing Garcia, he's going to want to get in on his own, play some good golf and peak for Whistling Straits. And between here and maybe the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth in a few weeks, I think he's going to have a couple strong starts.
I've got a similar strategy. I'm taking it in a little different direction, looking at that group that's at even par. I think they're at a discount, and you can maybe find some diamonds in the rough. And I think I found one with Daniel Berger at 5,800. It was shocking to see this salary for him, given how well he has played this season. We're used to seeing him near the top of DFS salary charts, and he's still a top 20 player in the world. I get that he's starting in that group at even. He's got some work to do, but he did string together 3 top 10s in 4 starts just a few weeks ago, and he does have some solid course history at East Lake. He is, again, in that mix of guys that are trying to have a tryout for Steve Stricker for making the Ryder Cup team. It seems like Daniel Berger is going to be a likely pick next week, but I don't think he's a lock. And so that's going to be a big motivating factor, not only trying to move up the FedEx Cup chart, but trying to solidify your spot, which would be his first start at the Ryder Cup next month. I think that's a big factor for Berger, and I think he's going to be up to the challenge.
I don't think I have ever seen Daniel Berger under 6,000, let alone 5,800 in daily fantasy. So that's a great look. In case you haven't heard by now, our Players News app is back, and it's better than ever. You can get all of our signature player news, updates, favorite players, receive mobile alerts, and more with the new NBC Sports EDGE app. Just search for the NBC Sports EDGE in the Apple Store or Google Play App Store. We still have our best bets, outright winners, and prop bets to come. You are watching Going for the Green.
Welcome to NBC Sports EDGE, your one stop for everything fantasy, DFS, and more. Get up-to-date news and insights from our award-winning analysts. Looking to raise your game even more? NBC Sports EDGE Plus helps you level up with an array of premium tools and resources keeping you ahead of the pack. Learn more at NBCSportsEdge.com.
Pressure's on to wrap up the show. We're giving our best bets, outright winner, and ultimately who will win the Tour Championship and get a bonus of a nice, cool $15 million. We'll get into all of that right here on Going for the Green. Super excited for the Tour Championship, guys. And now, as we kind of get ready for our best bets, I do want to clarify this could be with or without the staggered scoring start. So depending what you like, be sure to mention that for people who are either betting the 72 holes or ultimately the winner that's getting the $15 million. Will, I'll begin with you here. Your favorite prop bet on the board.
Yeah, I like that we're having to specify. Are we going low gross or low net? It's just like the member guest at your local country club. Which flight are you going to play for? If we're talking prop bets, there's one that really stands out for me. It's a guy that we've talked about in terms of course history that I'm a big fan of this week. Xander Schauffele is starting in T16, so he's at 200. He's got half the field above him, but he's plus money, plus 110 to get into the top 10 at the end of the week. I don't know that he has enough to climb the mountain to get into the mix, given that he's starting 7-8 shots back from some of these leaders. But I do think that at the end of the day, by Sunday, he's going to be in the top 10 of this leaderboard. We've seen him win here before. Last year, he had the low gross total. He has played so well. We saw what he did at the Olympics just a few weeks ago. He's starting a little far back, so I don't know that he's in the mix for the FedEx Cup. But in terms of other markets and a plus 110 for a top 10 finish, I think that's my favorite prop.
Okay, plus 110. All right, prop bet. Drew, I go to you here. What do you like?
I'm going to take a matchup, and I'm going to go with Victor Hovland over Colin Morikawa. I think Hovland is playing very, very well right now. I think he's in the mix. We haven't mentioned him, as a guy that could run up on the leaders here and challenge for this title, but I think he is playing extremely well right now. And on the flip side, Colin Morikawa's, his approach game has really suffered in the light of his recent injury, on top of the fact that these greens play poorly to his weakness and his game, which is on the putting surface. So I think Hovland wins this one pretty comfortably, and I backed him at -105 over Colin.
Okay, Patrick, that leaves me with you. Prop bet, all the ones you could choose from. Which is your favorite?
I feel like we're all kind of on the same page here, which, feels good for once. But, for all the reasons said previously, it's Sung Jae Im's week, and I like him to finish inside the top 10 at +190. He starts at 3 under, so one better than Will's guy Xander, and he's just one stroke outside the top 10. And if that tee to green game that has been there the whole past month or two comes to Eastlake, I think he has no issues making up that one stroke over the course of 72 holes.
Okay, that does it for the prop discussion. Now we get to talk about the winner. Who's going to get the $15 million, or maybe who you like to win the 72
This
hole
pick is worth $15 million.
Yes, you guys will get $15 million from Drew. It's amazing.
I didn't know it was worth that much. I should have done more homework.
Yes, that's exactly it. But you're paying out, so you'll just write yourself a check if you win. And if somehow I might need to pull a winner out right now, I wasn't prepared. But now that this money's on the line,
Drew, you're on Justin Thomas's corner already. You're looking good.
Drew, I'll begin with you here. Ultimately, who you like as the outright winner?
I'll take Rory McIlroy for the 72-hole winner.
Okay.
I would like to see history repeat itself and see him come from behind and get the overall win. Obviously, that's a nicer payday. You can get that to 25, 30 to 1 range. But Rory McIlroy at 12 to 1 to be the 72-hole stroke play winner is where I'm going with my outright bet.
Okay. Patrick, I'll go to you here.
You guys know I hate going to the top of the odds board, but I just don't see a scenario where Jon Rahm doesn't win the FedEx Cup. He was 4 to 1 overnight at PointsBet, down to +350. And maybe if you want some extra juice, you could parlay it with one of Drew's tennis plays. But I think he gets it done this week. And, being who I am, I've also parlayed it with a certain tournament 8 months away, also in the state of Georgia, for a nice little 55 to 1 payday.
Oh,
okay, a little preview there. Well, I go to you, either the FedEx Cup winner or the 72-hole stroke play winner, or if you have both and you want to give both plays out, where are you going?
Yeah, I'm still reeling from the exotics play. I didn't know we were doing, time to lay parlay legs here. We can have a whole nother show for that. That's all right. Sara, you and I can share this pick. I'm going with JT. I'm going with the net division. He's 12 to 1 for the low gross, 17 to 1 to win the whole thing, as he did a couple years ago. He's starting at 4 under. So there's, you got to think about this. What are the scenarios where he has the low 72-hole score, but he doesn't win? Maybe he beats Bryson by only 2. You got to factor Jon Rahm. He beats Cantlay by 4. That's not going to get it done. But I think that Cantlay and Bryson specifically are weak at the top. You're going to have to sweat Jon Rahm. But I like getting a little bit extra price at 17 to 1 to see JT come from one shot further back than where Rory was 2 years ago, make a run and win the whole thing.
Yeah, he's trying to join both Tiger and Rory to win the FedEx Cup 2 times in his career. All right, gentlemen, that does it for our Going for the Green. Good luck with all of your bets we discussed today. For Will, Drew, and Patrick, and all of us here with NBC Sports Edge, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck with all of your wagers, and enjoy the finale of the PGA Tour's FedEx Cup playoffs. We'll see you next time.